use it every day. Breaks down easy, fits into a pram. The child can carry it, do it no harm.
Hi, this is Michael Azarad, Editor-in-Chief of The Talkhouse, and welcome to the Talkhouse Music Podcast. In the late 70s, Andy Gill and Jon Langford were schoolmates at the University of Leeds in England. That was where Andy started a band called Gang of Four, and Jon started a band called the Mekons. And those bands went on to great things, such as helping to invent post-punk, and just generally being iconically great bands. Jon and Andy are also two of the smartest musicians I've ever met, so we thought we'd put these two old friends together and have them discuss some of the roots of British punk and post-punk. Formed in 1977, the Mekons are possibly the longest-running post-punk band. Their music has encompassed punk rock, country music, and dub reggae, and they've released many excellent albums and are lots of fun at parties. The band was recently the subject of a documentary called Revenge of the Mekons. Legend has it that a member of the Mekons actually named the band Gang of Four. In the late 70s and early 80s, Gang of Four made some classic albums of life-changing, canonical, neo-Marxist post-punk, like Entertainment, Solid Gold, and Songs of the Free. They've influenced everybody from Rage Against the Machine to St. Vincent. They're like, important. With Andy Gill as the sole remaining original member, they released an album this year called What Happens Next. Here, Andy and Jon trace the evolution of the concept of punk rock as it traveled north through England, up to Leeds, and how it inspired their respective bands. Punk's chief message, according to these guys? You can really go anywhere you want with it. They spoke via Skype, Jon in Chicago, Andy in London. We had a technical glitch, so you'll hear a change in the audio halfway through. Here we go.
Well, we were in Leeds, which I think was a strange place to be. And the very first day I went to Leeds University to study fine art, I came up from South Wales and I went to a freshers conference. And the people who picked me up at the freshers conference to show me around the art department and sort of the Leeds 3, Leeds 2 area were Andy Corrigan and Mark White. And they became the singers in the Mekons when the Mekons formed a little bit later. And Andy was very interested that I had a drum kit, and he said, "You might want to bring your drum kit up to Leeds." I didn't have it with me, and he said, "There's a friend of mine. He's got a band, and they're going to be a cross between the Velvet Underground and Dr. Feelgood." And that was the very first day I got to Leeds. I thought, that sounds good, except I know who Dr. Feelgood are, but I'm not quite sure who the Velvet Underground are because I was quite naive at the time.
That
was the Gang of Four, obviously.
And the first people you met were Mark White and Andy Corrigan.
Then we sort of got bored with looking around the university, and they took me around Kevin's house where I met Kevin and Mick Wixie. It was really strange. It was just like my whole future was decided in like kind of one random moment.
I know, isn't it weird? Yes, very strange.
If I'd gone to Reading University, I might be, painting portraits of the Queen or something now. Who knows?
Yeah, like Mr. Me.
Yeah.
Henry Me.
Henry Me with his velvet jacket and his immaculate.
Yes. Yeah, and his full of bollocks conversation.
Exactly. But Andy was there. You were there like 2 years before me, I think.
So
I got there in '76, October '76.
Oh yeah,
just as the punk rock thing was sort of breaking in the tabloid press.
I mean, I always, when I listen to the first thing that Gang of Four did, it does sound quite punk rock. It's sort of quite fast and a bit thrashy and stuff. But it very quickly morphed into something else. And I always thought about, I always thought about the big classic punk bands like the Damned and the Pistols and so on, the British ones. I totally enjoyed them. But I always thought it was just a bit like sort of faster heavy metal kind of thing.
Heavy metal with its trousers taken in.
Yes, and perhaps less latex. But I mean, I think with the Mekons, they took one aspect of punk and sort of ran with it, and the DIY thing was very important with the Mekons. The amateurism was very important. I mean, and to be celebrated and displayed, and the ideas side of it. So it was, to me, it took little aspects of sort of punk and took them completely somewhere else. And and I loved all the things that went on. The odd, the strange dialogue between Mark Weiss and Andy Corrigan and stuff in the beginning. But with Gang of Four, I think I had this idea that I wanted it to be sort of tight and groovy and funky, but sort of contain elements of noise, as Andy Corrigan said, like the Velvet Underground and so on. And so I sort of thought, I'll give you an example. When the Pistols came to play at Leeds, did you go to that, John?
You know what? I didn't go to that concert.
Neither did I.
Really? I thought you must have gone. I wasn't bothered. I just thought it was just some London fashion rubbish. I thought at the time.
Well, no, I mean, I knew exactly what it was, and there was Corrigan and Mark, and I don't know exactly who, but I expect Kevin.
Kevin definitely went because he had a tampon dangling. He had a tampon dangling from his ear, and apparently, people came up to him. People asked him if he was a punk rocker, and he'd never actually heard the term at the time. Or so he claims. He'd never heard the term.
So he claimed, yeah. And Andy Corrigan had a razor blade earring, didn't he? Or was it a penis?
a razor blade penis, I think it was. Yes.
But he was photographed, and he was put in the Leeds, what was it called, Evening Post or even whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yorkshire Evening Post.
And there was Corrigan. And what it said underneath it said, this punk rocker wore a razor blade earring or a penis earring. I can't remember which one it was. I'm going to have to contact Corrigan and ask him. But so anyway, I digress. But people felt it sort of necessary to go and check it out. And I'd heard sort of, in my mind, I'd heard Dr. Feelgood in 1974, and punk rock was good, but I didn't need to check it out. I didn't need to have a look. I didn't need to have a listen. I sort of knew, so I went to the cinema instead.
Weren't you in New York though the summer before that? You and John.
In '76, John King and me went to New York and hung out at CBGB's and stuff, and with Mary Harron, and met all these people like John Cale and the people from television and people in Patti Smith's band and all that kind of stuff. And I think, I mean, that was very influential on us because we sort of said, well, all these very nice, ordinary people are doing it, and we've got probably as good, if not better, ideas ourselves. So we should be getting on with it when we get back to the UK. I think that was a lot of what went through our mind.
I know. I mean, for me, just the fact that it was just Corrigan saying Velvet Underground and Dr. Feelgood. Looking back on that now, with a huge historical perspective, those two bands, incredibly crucial bands. It was kind of like, I mean, almost any band. I think it was not necessarily the Gang of Four, but almost any band at that time. If you'd listened to those two bands, it was such a major signpost to go somewhere else rather than the kind of what was actually happening in the 70s. I mean, I grew up in South Wales at a time when there was just this sort of like rumours of something called pub rock, and then
Pub
like
rock,
kind
yeah.
of there was, but they never really came down our way. And then I used to see bands like fans used to want to take you to go see Genesis or Yes, and it was all incredibly tedious to me. I just hated it. I
Mm.
really didn't like it. And then there was this kind of Hawkwind kind of people doing a lot of drugs and traveling around the country and running away from school to be with Hawkwind kind of thing,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I
yeah,
kind of liked
yeah.
Hawkwind, but it wasn't of great interest to me. But I felt a bit robbed at that time that there wasn't, glam rock had been this thing that went on when I was about 12, 13, and I really liked that. But it seemed like everything had gone. Like Bowie had gone to America and Roxy Music had split up, and the bands
Yeah.
that interested me in the first place, everything had disappeared. So when punk rock happened, and it was kind of like with the Sex Pistols. Once you got the idea of it, you almost didn't have to hear it. I never bought
No,
their record.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
It was just a kind of like, right, here we go then. Now we can totally do something. And
Yes, yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, John King said a few years ago that his daughter was talking about, so what was music like back then? And he said, "Oh, you're gonna love, you'll love this," and put on the Sex Pistols, and he said, "Oh, well, that's not very good, is it?" And then put on the next one, and maybe the next one, and and none of them actually were that kind of gripping, and so it's sort of spoilt his memory of it being a great thing. But when I sort of the stuff that from apart from Dr. Feelgood, when I was younger, I went to see Captain Beefheart at the Albert Hall, which was quite a good experience, and
yeah,
the band playing at Wembley, and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young were headlining, but I wasn't that interested in them. I actually fell asleep, but I was there. I was there for the band, and then Bob Marley at the Lyceum with that live thing, and those things had kind of a lot more of a kind of effect on me than anything that came along. Well, certainly any of the British kind of punk rock, that didn't really kind of do much for me.
no, I had the same thing. I had the Television album, and
Mm.
I was really into that. But people were buying singles. Like we used to listen to the first Clash album. I remember quite a lot around
Yes,
Chroma
we
Ham.
did. We did. Yes, yeah, very
and it
much
and
so.
it
Yeah.
was, but it was. I always thought, it sounded a bit weedy. No, even just compared to what the Gang of Four sounded like in their very earliest gigs, it was
Mm.
like it was definitely something more kind of substantial and kind of like immense going on. I don't
Mm.
know. I always thought that I think being in the north of England was a big thing as well, because I think whatever messages were being sent out in London about what punk rock was, by the time they got up the M1 or up the M5 to Manchester or M6 to Manchester, everyone had kind of got a totally different take on it, and
Yeah, that's right.
it wasn't so much just about this kind of two-dimensional, speeded up heavy metal fashion statement and
Mm.
chest pumping anarchy, and there were all these bands that suddenly saw it as an opportunity just to do whatever you wanted to do, and
Yeah.
it was just like a signal that says, all right, the rules are all changed, and now you can kind of make your own entertainment. And for me, like I
Yeah.
said, as someone who felt a bit robbed by the 1974, 75, 76 period, when I felt like really up for something to be happening, and it was
Mm.
just a bunch of old hippies wandering around smoking pot.
Yeah.
Punk was great. And then once we started, I had no intention of going to Leeds to be in a band, but it was just like it
Mm. Mm.
swept us by. Immediately, we were swept up in it. And the fact that the Gang of Four had a rehearsal room in the Film Society offices above the Fenton
Yeah.
or next to the Fenton was fantastic for the Mekons, because we didn't even have to have equipment. We could just have a few
I know.
pints, and then,
Yeah.
as you say in the movie, I saw the movie the other night, the Mekons movie. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it yet. No, no. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, that's you actually say that. That we would you would go for a pint and we would scurry up the stairs and pick up your instruments and
No, that's right.
right.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. I mean, it was, and we were this inverted commas collective, So I don't know why we sort of had more equipment than you did. I think, but yeah, but that's exactly how it was. And that thing you said about, punk rock's kind of main function was anything goes, and like the walls have been kicked in. Do whatever you want. That was very much that's often what I say as well. That for me the main achievement was that you can, any subject is up for grabs. You don't have to be like other bands. You can really go anywhere you want with it. And I think that was sort of the main kind of takeaway from it, as they say these days.
And I think, the think of the bands up in the north of England that we sort of shared bills with. I mean, there was a band like the Rosillos were the first gig, the Mekons, the first proper gig the Mekons did, where we got a record contract out of it, which was entirely bizarre because we just thought the Gang of Four should have a record out and not us. But Bob Lass picked the Mekons because he saw us.
That's right.
We'd be we played in Manchester one night with I think the Slits were there, and Cabaret Voltaire. We were on Fast Product with the Human League, who were purely synth-based experimental type group before they became a pop band. It was just a time of great opportunity, and I think in the north of England, removed from that kind of tight walls of what was punk and what wasn't. Up there, it was kind of like anything could be punk. Do you remember The Worst?
Yes, I do. And
they were worse than the Mekons. It was fantastic.
Yeah, but do you remember I played? But do you remember I played drums with them?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, in the Tartan Bar.
In the Tartan Bar, yeah.
They were the worst as well. They were fantastic,
but enjoyably so. Yeah, it was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. So.
How does it affect me today? I still think you can do whatever you want. That's as simple as that. I still think that moment, and I've talked to a bunch of people, over the years, like Adrian Sherwood, said the same thing as well. Suddenly punk happened, but he didn't feel like he had to be a punk, but it just gave him license to do things and feel like it was, worthwhile rather than feeling like it was not allowed. And I think in the mid-70s, music was the domain of people who'd been to music college.
Yeah, definitely. But then, we're on tricky territory there because we've got degrees.
I did go back and get my degree. I did.
I didn't. I thought you got it first. What, you didn't get it first time?
No, I took a year. When we signed the Virgin, me and Tom just packed it in.
Ah, of course, right? Yeah. Because you were. Yeah, I always forget. That you were a year or two. Younger than me. Yeah, I always forget that.
You finished. That was
me.
You finished in. Did you finish in 79? 78.
I think it was 79. Because what happened was, I said to everybody, "Look, I'm going to finish this degree, so I'm really happy to kind of do as many gigs as we can, but I'm going to work during the day." And I think so. We had to, I did a final exhibition. What was it like? May 79.
Yeah.
We jumped in a transit, drove down
straight on the houseboat.
Straight onto that houseboat, where we lived, which is sort of like, sort of 24-hour party people houseboat. And then this was the clever thing, Rob Waugh had got us this houseboat in in Chelsea, and we had to go across to the furthest reaches of East London every day to go to the studio to record entertainment, and then we'd drive back at night to continue the party. And then we did that for 4 or 5 weeks, and then we got on a plane to America and did our first tour in America. So
seriously, that was all the same time, right?
That was all the same time, yeah.
Yeah, that summer we left. We were hanging around on the houseboat for no apparent reason, but then we went.
I remember.
Then we went up to the Manor and recorded the Mekons' first album
in 79.
Yeah, I was thinking that was like Virgin must really like us if they're sending us to the Manor. But of course, the Manor was just empty that week, and then they could charge us loads of money and put it against our advance, and they got their studio filled up. So it was completely inappropriate and stupid thing to do. But yeah, that's what we did in those days. Stupid and inappropriate.
Was Mick managing you in inverted commas at that point?
Yeah, I mean, Mick was just our mate, really, but he was sort of he was good. He was good on a sort of spiritual level, Mick. He used to rally the troops when we were feeling down. He would rally us and make us think it was worth doing. And then, you know, but that first album was kind of a killer. You know, to have we're hanging about. Most of the songs we did have been written in '77 or something, and they still wanted to record all those songs in '79, and we just wanted to do something else, but we didn't know what else to do. So it was odd.
Yeah. And the next one was the one with the painting on the front, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's when that Mick was directly responsible for that, and I know that was your idea for the cover, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was my idea for the cover.
Andy Corrigan going up into the fine art library with a razor blade, and we found the book of Caspar David Friedrich.
Yeah.
Then I went and coughed loudly as the razor blade went through the book.
Oh, yeah. Arts vandalism. Cover. Yeah,
it was going to be called. It was going to be called "It's the Mekons Boss," and we were going to write "It's the Mekons Boss" on in a speech bubble coming out of the abyss.
Mm-hmm.
And then they worked out they needed 2,000 rather than 1,000. We're just going to do 1,000 of that album, and then it turned out that they had pre-orders for 2,000. So we said, "Fuck it, we can't be bothered to write on 2,000 records."
But what was on
the front? It doesn't say anything. Nothing. It's just the Caspar David Friedrich picture. It doesn't say anything.
Because I remember "It's the Mekons Boss" on the cover of the one I had, or whatever.
I probably wrote that on it.
Maybe that's what it was. Because I thought that was printed. Okay.
No, and it was a prototype.
Yeah, and that had Corporal Chalky on it, didn't it?
Yeah, and that was a really amazing time because we'd been fired by Virgin. Oh no, hadn't been. We started making that record. We were still on Virgin, but they told us.
Then they heard some of the stuff that you were proposing to record.
Oh yeah, and then they were out of there as fast as possible. Likewise, Rough Trade, who said they would, if we ever left Virgin, they would put out our next album. They heard it, and they were like, "No, thanks."
Yeah.
Shame, because I think that stuff's really great.
So do I. You know, I think it's my favorite stuff in a way. You know, that second album. I think it's.
Well, it was just very. It was very low stakes in a way because we already kind of twigged that everybody hated us. So it was nice. It was really freeing when you thought we were just making this totally for our own entertainment. I was describing the new Mekons album and how we were going to try and do it. The punchline for our advertising splurge will be, why does it take more time to record an album than it does to listen to it? What would happen if it took the same length of time? Which is obviously ridiculous, but we're going to sort of go all Luddite and record an album on one microphone at a venue in New York in front of a selected audience, and just bash out the songs or whatever they are. They might not even be all songs. It might be something a little more strange than that, like a little weird little review with some strange noises and spoken word passages even. I don't know. Not sure about the content yet, but just that was the idea. And Andy was saying how he's like spending a lot of time on the last Gang of Four album doing tons of tweaking and working on it, and that's kind of what the Mekons did on the last two albums. We tried to use the new technologies that exist now as a way to kind of like maybe conquer the geography issues we have, because people live all on different continents. But also, the albums, the one thing I loved doing it that way and sending stuff around, and everything was very fluid and nothing was really had to be pinned down. You could just kind of like take things in all sorts of strange directions and reinvent things at the very last minute and add things when you felt like it. But it was incredibly time consuming. So we thought we'd better sort of go back to year zero for this one.
I mean, if you get there and get in a room and just spend a couple of days just playing songs again and again and again, I think I think you can kind of get there that way as well. I think the all the technology stuff adds more and more time to the problem. It becomes more and more time consuming the more technology you've got. Once people got computers, that was when the length of time to make an album expanded by 3.
Yeah. I remember Dick Taylor telling me that when the Pretty Things used to go in, the producer's job was to stand there looking at his watch and say, "Can we try that one again?" He go like, "No, there's no time. We've got the Dave Clark 5 coming in at 2 o'clock, so you better get this. Have you got enough songs for an album yet? Yeah, right, finished then."
I know. I remember going Gang of Four playing in John Peel's session, and when we got in there, the producer was on the phone talking to someone, and we started setting up. We got the sound together. The producer was still on the phone, and I think after we'd recorded the first song, he got off the phone and said hello, but then got back on the phone again after that. So not, and really occasionally looked at his watch and said, "Okay, that's that."
Was it Buffin?
I can't. The producer, I can't remember his name. I just remember the experience.
There was a bloke with a moustache called Roger who used to like a few drinks down the BBC club and wanted to get out there as fast as possible. And there was Dale Griffin, who was Mott the Hoople's drummer. We did a couple of sessions.
You've got an amazing memory. Yeah, I can't remember any of them really.
He just hated any band that I was involved in. You could see his face drop when I walked through the door because he knew it was going to take much longer than it should. But
yeah.
But yeah, actually,
John King.
Sorry, go on.
John King was kept telling me that he was talking to his stockbroker, which may or may not have been the truth. I don't know, but John King says he overheard something about sell BT or something.
There's a great story about Mark Riley Mark Smith from The Fall being in there and doing a BBC session, and somebody said, "Is that Buffin from Mott the Hoople?" And the engineer said, "Yeah, but he's called Dale Griffin now, and whatever you do, don't call him Buffin." And he spent the entire session calling him variations on Buffin, Buff Lad, Hey Buff. Can you turn me up in the morning, Buff Lad? Buff, hey Buff. Which apparently drove.
Of course he would.
Into distraction. Yeah.
He would do that, Mark. He would do that.
Why not?
Yeah. So
what you haven't said what you're up to then? I think I said we're doing a Mekons tour in July. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, and that was yeah. You were talking about.
You still touring it?
Yeah. We just we did a month in America, a bit more than a month in March. Then we came back, and then we've just done 8 days in Europe, in various places, ending in Zagreb. And basically got back a couple of days ago, and then there's various gigs that we're doing in Germany and UK in the next couple of months. Manchester and stuff. And we'll come back to America in the autumn.
All right.
Yeah.
You're coming back to Chicago?
I don't know. It's not, that's just that's the intention to come back. I mean, we definitely would hit some of the places that we, didn't play last time, which are many, because North America's a big place. So
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be some places that we go back to, and I mean, the Chicago gig was really cool, and there was a lot of people, and it went down well and all that. So where's your painting coming from at this point in time?
It's sort of, that's gone full circle as well right now, because I got invited by the Country Music Hall of Fame to do some work for them. They did a huge exhibit that opened in the end of March called Dylan, Cash and the Nashville Cats, and they wanted a painting of Bob Dylan and Johnny Cash. So I was like, oh, that sounds like an easy thing for me to do. But the exhibition is really amazing. It's incredible. I thought, Country Music Hall of Fame, I had a feeling it was a bit like kind of Garth Brooks, Travis Disneyland or something. But it's this intensely scholarly museum where they went for this idea of talking about Nashville in the 60s to sort of really debunk all the preconceived notions of it being this kind of hick town. And it's actually the people who played there, like Lloyd Green and Charlie McCoy and Charlie Daniels, were these incredible musicians, and people flocked there. And the whole hippie kind of redneck divide of the 60s is a real kind of myth. You think of the records that are made of it. Dylan made Blonde on Blonde in Nashville, and Nashville Skyline the same year, I think, in fact, which is kind of insane. So I got the paint. So I did a painting of all these kind of unknown guys as well. People that everybody in the world who has a record that was recorded in the 60s has them in their record collection, but nobody really kind of knows who they are. And it was fabulous. So I went down, and they used the kind of style of the painting that I did as the sort of template for the whole exhibition. So there's bits of my kind of scratchy stuff and kind of edgings and lettering all over the whole Country Music Hall of Fame, and the painting's a giant banner outside, so it was all very nice. And then they said, would you like to sing with them? And I was like, yeah, I think I would like to do that. So I ended up singing 2 Johnny Cash songs on the stage at the Country Music Hall of Fame with David Briggs, Norbert Putnam, Lloyd Green, Wayne Moss, who was the guy who played guitar on Pretty Woman, which was fantastic. And then Charlie McCoy, when I met him, he says, hey, John, are you British? And I said, yeah, I'm British. He says, well, listen to this. And he played me the theme to the Old Grey Whistle Test. But then I thought, that's right, yeah, the Old Grey Whistle Test. He said, well, that's me. And it was him who played the theme.
Oh, he did it?
Yeah, it was actually him. I talked to him for a long time. He's a really funny guy. He was 74. It was his birthday while I was there, and they're all kind of like still playing. They're really at it. It was really amazing to meet them, and they each one had a little booth. They did great things with the acoustics, so you could go into these little booths and you could sonically cut off from everywhere else in the exhibition space, and you could hit all these buttons, and you'd see these guys that be playing, they're playing there. They're playing on a Connie Smith track or some country track, and then next to it, Aretha Franklin, Elvis, Neil Young, the Byrds. It was the entire breadth of American music in the 60s. These guys played on it.
Why did the Mekons sort of drift towards the sort of country music thing? What happened there? What was that? What was that about?
We were into folk music very much, and when we went to do that second album, we were at Leader Sound, and we met Bill Leader and then John Gill, and we suddenly realized that maybe what we were doing wasn't this kind of solely punk rock year zero thing. It was actually maybe something that was in a broader tradition. And after that, listening to some of this crazy unaccompanied folk music and thinking about what Chalky was trying to do at the time, it was really interesting. And then Terry Nelson was a guy from Chicago. You know Terry, and he brought a load of cassettes over. He came to England in 1983, around the time we were recording this thing called the English Dancing Master up in Bridlington. And that was all drum machines and accordions and violins and kind of weird English country dance type music that we'd listen to through Bill Leader. But Bill Leader was like the kind of, we accidentally found it.
Yeah.
And then we started, Terry Nelson's thing was, John Gill and Bill Leader's thing was like, you're like a folk band because you don't hide your mistakes. You're very open and bare, and everything you do, and you incorporate your lack of ability to play into your sound, and it's like folk music. Then Terry Nelson was like, you're like a country band because all your songs are 3-chord songs about drinking in bars and failed sexual relationships, which was also true. And he I thought I hated country music, and then he started playing all this amazing Noel Haggard, George Jones stuff. Me and Tom and Kevin just really got into that stuff, and became, by the end of the 80s, when everybody was into acid house and we were coming back from the States in our cowboy shirts with our Stetsons on, with bags of Bob Wills records and Hank Williams records. Everybody thought we were just insane, but we were completely out of step with what was going on in England. Yeah, and I think that's why the band sort of, when we did Fear and Whiskey, which was a record that some people have said it was the Mekons doing country. It was us doing the Mekons after having listened to a lot of country music. We couldn't really, we never tried to sound like it, but we were so steeped in it at that time. But it was like us getting country kind of upside down, or like Bob Last said, he liked the Mekons and said it was like we did a photocopy of pop music, and it's like really bad Xerox, and that's what I think our relationship with country was. We had no idea what it was all about, but we just took the bits we liked, and that's where Fear and Whiskey came out. That took off in the States, and then Ruth Polsky who brought us over with you and just play hurrahs in 81. She brought the Mekons over in 86, and we just sort of never looked back. Then we just kept going once or twice a year until I woke up one morning. I was living in Chicago.
Yeah.
I mean, with the Mekons, it's almost like it was never about the actual sound. We never had a defined sound. It was a sound of the first band, then there was a rejection of that, and then something else altogether. And it's kind of gone along like that. It's more like, if you talk again about punk rock, maybe punk rock was about the ideas and the attitude more than it was about the musicality or the sonic elements even.
Yeah. I mean, I always think there's that the sound and the musical structure of things is really important. That's kind of where I come from. Is that what I just said, really, the sound of it and what's going on in the music, what is going on with the rhythms. I mean, as you know, that I'm fairly rhythm obsessed. Things have to be right rhythmically for me for it to work. For what I do to work.
Yeah, well, it has helped with the Mekons having, Steve Goulding, who played with the Gang of Four for a bit, having him he's been in the band for 20 years this year. So it's
yeah,
it does help.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I like to think I taught him everything he knows.
I hope you did. No, but I mean, the Gang of Four was, there was a kind of rejection in the early things you did of that 70s rock. It was like 70s rock turned on its head, where all the solos were things dropping out, and it was I don't know, it was very exciting. After
and it was all everything was very, very meticulously put together, like a Swiss watch. It was because I'm like that. It just it wasn't done until everything had been like finally tuned. And where the hi-hat went and the open hi-hat, and did it come on the 3 or the 3.5, and and that the whole way it was put together was incredibly meticulous, and I think sometimes drove other people in the band up the wall. And John would sometimes say to me, "Well, what's wrong with 4 on the floor?" And I'd say, "Well, yeah, in some circumstances that's fine, and in others it's not." And Hugo would, argue with me a lot about why I was insistent about this beat being there or that beat being there, and so it was, it was not just about the spirit of things; it was about this kind of obsessive getting it into a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the early Mekons, there was an obsession with kind of minimalism, because people weren't, really able to play their instruments very well in any conventional sense. But it was all about, well, it could be really exciting if we just strip it down to next to nothing,
Yes.
So.
No, and you did it. You did that terribly well.
You were the first. You were the first drummer in the Mekons, weren't you? Because I didn't show up for the first gig.
Yes, that's right.
I was actually in the band, but I decided to go on holiday.
Yes. No, I was the first drummer. And it was fun and interesting, and but that's what it was like then, wasn't it? Because we felt that we could kind of help each other here and there.
I just remember the PA and the Wharf Street room, and all that.
Yeah, I mean that PA that we put together, me and John King steaming bits of wardrobe over a kettle to try and so we could bend it into the flares for a bass cabinet.
Yeah, they were those were monstrous bass cabinets. We went to clubs that they would not fit in. They wouldn't go through the door.
Yeah, Andy Corrigan's brilliant design. Yeah.
It was fantastic. Yeah. But it wasn't. It was a kind of. I remember being told off in the student union, like by Ros Allen, because I hadn't been down to do my bit on building the PA that morning when I was supposed to be there.
Well, she was quite right.
Like, oh, yeah.
And good for Ros.
Yeah, I know.
Good for Ros.
Yeah, no,
giving you a
should have
ticking
been
off.
there.
I probably encouraged her to tick you off about it because I was a good kind of foreman. I was a good foreman, And...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember a guy in Newport at the Stowaway, in my hometown in Newport. A guy called Dave Bowen was the manager of the Stowaway Club, and we turned up there with that PA, and there was ice up the back step on the fire escape. We had to carry it up, and he said, "Oh, the band's great. You just lose the PA and you'll be all right." He says, "Most clubs have PAs." We were like, "Yeah, but we built this one." He says, "Well, most clubs have them though."
Yeah.
But I think that was about the last time we used it.
He omitted the fact that they also charge you to use the buggers.
Yeah, they did it. Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the motivations, because we'd support somebody like, do you remember that band, The Depressions?
Yes, they were horrible.
Horrible, yeah, and we'd turn up and we'd be booked to support them, and they'd say, "Well, that's 20 quid to use our PA." So that was a big motivation in like, well, let's be independent and get our own PA.
Yeah, and nobody died carrying it up the fire escape, so it's all right.
No, it's a miracle they didn't, but there we go.
It's a fucking miracle.
I've now got to go because it's 8:30.
I've got to
here.
go as well.
Great talking to you,
And,
and if you get a chance to come, if you come into London,
I
I've
might
got.
be in. I fancy a day in London actually.
Yeah.
Need to be for a bit. So
Good luck with the flight, and see you soon. I hope.
all right, mate. Ta-ta now.
Andy Gill and Jon Langford have both written great pieces for the Talkhouse, so by all means look them up at thetalkhouse.com/music. This is Michael Azared, Editor-in-Chief of the Talkhouse, and thanks for listening to the Talkhouse Music Podcast. Thanks to our producer-engineer, Elia Einhorn. For more Talkhouse Music podcasts, and for lots of great writing about music by some excellent musicians, visit thetalkhouse.com/music.